3, 2, 1.
Hey.
Hey.
Good evening.
Saturday streaming. It's nice to be back. Last Saturday, when we would have been here, we were at Cabargo.
That's right.
Yeah.
We were playing for real live people.
Real life
instead of
people.
you and you lot.
Are there any live people out there? Say good day if you are, and I'll see if I can
give
work
us a yell.
out. We're there, I think, Chloe. Well, that's something.
That's a start.
It's more than a start. I'll put my link in if I've got it there. Oh, I do. Hi, everybody. It's a momentous day in this house. It's a momentous day out there in this great wide land. Here's to you all. By the time you're watching this on YouTube, I guess you'll know all about.
All will be revealed. At this point, though, we have no idea where we will be this time tomorrow.
We will make no forecasts.
No.
And we will not mention the fidget wheels and the dribbling numbers coming in. This is we'll try and look at a bit of a broader picture.
All right.
Firstly, welcome to Millthorpe. I'm Jason. This is Chloe. And Millthorpe is right in the central tablelands of New South Wales, and mostly we remember this part of New South Wales as Wiradjuri country. I'm very pleased to say that it always was and always will be Wiradjuri country, and we feel very fortunate to live on this beautiful, beautiful part of the world. If I could live anywhere, I'd live here. And this very day, Chloe and I are celebrating 30 years together. Not 30 years going out, 30 years staying in. We found each other and stayed in for the rest of our lives so far. So just to be clear, I guess, we met playing music. So we had, 4 or 5 months playing music together and in a band called Blissbomb before we fell in love, fell into each other's arms. So we worked together really closely on the music. The music came first. And then the relationship. So this is the big day for us. We don't really have a huge wedding anniversary that we celebrate, but we celebrate this particular autumnal date every year, and especially 30 years, eh? And duets. We thought, well, what will we do for Saturday streaming, given that it fell on the day?
And surprisingly few love song style duets actually came up, because that's not actually what we have a passion for mostly, as you'll see. So we've allowed duet to be anything from poem with accompaniment or sung bit in it. Songs where we both share the verses, they're duets as well. Tunes where we swap the tune. All of these things are duets. And the diversity is actually quite good.
Yeah, we've never thought to do this before. So there's a real definition for duet. We both contribute equally and vocally to each piece. Some of them we've written the music for. I don't think we're playing any we wrote the whole song for tonight. But no. The music, some of them, all of them, of course, we've arranged. And of the many, many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of works that we've dug into, there's just a real choice little few where this is the case. And the first one is a love song. One of the oldest songs we sing.
Make a liar out of me.
Well, it's a love song of sorts. It's a love song.
It is.
One of our favourite songs to sing, which is nice to start with. It is, I would say.
It's better than that. It's kind of a life song.
Well, it's a love of new country. This country.
Finding who you want to be with and where you want to be. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, so, exactly. And a song we love. This is Lad from Erin's Isle. I've loved this song since I was a kid. I think it is fair to say it's one of our favourites to play.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Lad from Erin's Isle, and Around the Lighthouse. With my swaddle on my shoulder, billy can in my hand, I'll tramp the bush of Australia with my true-born Irishman. When first I came to Sydney, the girls and me did smile, saying one unto the other, here's a lad from Erin's Isle. Well, I went down to a public house to spend an hour or two, and the door to daughter of the landlady, she fell in love with me. Of Australia with the true-born Irishman. So around the lighthouse now I tramp, nor leave it out of sight. My swag goes on the left shoulder, then I take it on me right. It's then I take it off me back, and often upon it I lie. It's the best of all the Tucker tracks, and upon it I should die. Often that turns out to be the case when we arrange something, is we kind of get out the end of a traditional piece and write a tune that kind of just says all about how we felt about the song. And Around the Lighthouse is one of my favourite images of all of those early Irish settlers, be they convict or otherwise. In that case, no sign of convict, no sign of gold, just a bloke who's made a new home. And I always like to think of those poor, huge numbers of poor English, whether they were from London, they were agriculturally based only a generation before. We now know that they were living beyond the limits of location really quickly. In Sydney, it was on the Hawkesbury, especially up the Hawkesbury, little settlements. Terrible situation for the Aboriginal people, but and then the line gets pushed further and further and further, of course, until this part of the New South Wales and further west, always just out of reach of British justice. The first time maybe ever, certainly in 2,000 years, that some of those people had a home, made a home. And the home they made was an interesting one because apart from, well, let's just sum it up. By the time they'd been here 100 years, we had the first political party in the world based on the needs, rights and wishes of the working people. Mm-hmm. That's the Australian Labor Party. You might remember them. I believe they're running a bit of a race tonight. Also, eventually, we had the first environmental parties. We had a second country in the world to have women voting. Mm-hmm. That's a remarkably progressive place. Not perfect by any means. Talk to any Aboriginal person about exactly how hard it was, but of its time, incredibly progressive. Bring it back. Hello, Warren. Hey, nice to see you. Oh, not that we can see you, but nice that you're out there. It's a funny world, isn't it? We're so used to gigs with people, and but it is nice to have faces to sing to. So one of the things that was going on in Australia was the production of some wonderful writers who wrote with the voice of the people, a language that was otherwise unrecorded and a point of view that was otherwise unrecorded. And the greatest of them all, in my opinion, was Henry Lawson. And Henry Lawson was up there writing about the shearers' strikes, 1890s, early 1890s in Western Queensland, so central Western Queensland, getting into all kinds of trouble. Accusations of sedition in the Queensland Parliament. Yeah. But he watched the foundation of the Australian Labor Party out there and wrote about it. And this is the song that got him into trouble. We'll risk it tonight, I think.
I think so. I think it's timely.
So speaking of love songs, I love Henry Lawson. And and we go straight from Henry's piece to another person we love dearly. This is John Dengate's last verse, so we'll join them together to give the appearance of a medley, as Alan Musgrove would say.
And no matter which way things go tonight, John Dengate's last verse gives us some inspiration to go forward with. Yeah.
So we've got Henry Lawson's Freedom on the Wallaby with a half-traditional tune and a tune from the great and late Chris Kempster. And then, John Dengate's last verse. Loafers thrive beside 'em, but food to eat and clothes to wear their native land denied 'em. And so they left their native land in spite of their devotion. And so they came, or if they stole, were sent across the ocean. Australia's a big country and freedom's something really. Freedom's on the Wallaby, don't you hear her gilly? She's just begun to boomerang, she'll knock the tyrant silly. She's going to light another fire and boil another billy.
Freedom couldn't stand the glare of royalty's regalia. She left the loafers where they were and came out to Australia. Now across the mighty main, the chains have come to bind her. She little thought to see again the wrongs she left behind her.
Australia's a big country and freedom's humping Billy. Freedom's on the Wallaby, don't you hear her cooey? She's just begun to boomerang, she'll knock the tyrant silly. She's going to light another fire and boil another billy. Our parents toiled to make a home, hard grubbing 'twas in clearing. They wasn't troubled much with law, but they was pioneering. Now that we have made the land a garden full of promise, old greed must crook his dirty hand and come to take it from us. So we must fly a rebel flag as others did before us. We must sing a rebel song and join in rebel chorus. We'll make the tyrants feel the sting of those that they would throttle. They needn't say the fault is ours if blood should stain the wattle. This world is full of terrible things. This world is full of curses. There's royal babies, queens and kings, out of tune, broken strings, bad, ill-written verses. We have to cope with government stealth. In vain we seek for answers. We have to cope with failing health and corporate crooks who steal our wealth. We have to deal with cancers. Oh, there's pommy bastards, screaming Yanks, and the curse of unending. Half-blind batsmen, greedy banks, still we stand in serried ranks. For all it's worth defending, we'll not surrender, won't give in, although our hair is grey. We come from tough, rebellious kin. Sometimes we lose, sometimes we win. We go on disobeying. So, yes, win, lose or draw tonight. Tomorrow morning we reform the battle plan, we form the serried ranks, and on we go. Whatever the fidget wheels fall, or whichever way they fall. More Henry now. A medley of a very short poem and a song we've set to music. A poem we've set to music. Yeah, the poem that we've set to music is one of Henry's early pieces from 1888 called Watch on the Kerb. Using light. Henry loved to talk about light in his work for hope.
Yeah. No, he's with a very, very few verses, he's capturing the extremity of life at the hard end of things. You know, when does it get too hard? When does it actually just get too hard? And the thing you need is hope, something to look forward to, something to work for, someone to love, preferably. Yeah,
love again. It's a central theme today in all kinds of ways. Not surprising for us celebrating 30 years of. The poem's one of Henry's later works that we're going to start here with. It's a piece he wrote called Day Before I Die, from 1907. And, well, you can see Henry's work is becoming more pressing, more difficult. Henry Lawson went through a sort of a cycle of his finding hope, first in the bush as a kid, and then for a brief time in the Christian church, as it was in the little village, education and school, and the bush, very little school, and then the workers, and starting to get some left-wing theory coming from overseas, which formed then some hope with the unions. Love came along, and then travel, running the whole time, but always feeling let down, being let down, and indeed letting down each of those things himself in his own ways. And The Day Before I Die speaks, well, it's not quite towards the end of Henry's life, but he's only had a few years to live, and you can get the idea of at least what Henry thought of his work as a values-based writer. Someone who bases his writing and as a poet, as a writer.
Yeah, we found ourselves quite drawn to those poems when we started setting Henry to music, the ones that talk about what he thinks he's doing, what his art means to him, and how he approaches it. These are the interesting ones to us.
So yeah, right out to Armentières, Warren. Absolutely we can shout out to Armentières. A great part of the world to live. Quite different from here. In a lot of ways. We don't get to the coast as much as we used to, but it's not a part of the world I'm unfamiliar with, that's for sure. Got some mates who've lived there over the years, and it's to Armentières.
Cheers.
So Henry wrote. Henry's Harry, as everyone called him, his favourite instrument was the fiddle. But I'm sure if he heard a tenor banjo, he might have changed his mind, wouldn't he?
Well, he would have been able to hear it.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
For someone with profound deafness, the banjo had some advantages. There's such a lot of work to do for such a troubled head. I'm scribbling this against the book with fool's cap round in bed. It strikes me that I'll scribble much in this way, by and write my last line so, perchance, the day before I die. But there's lots of things to come and go, and I, in careless rhyme, and drink, and love, it wastes the most. Have wasted lots of time. There's so much good work to do, it makes me sure that I'll be sorriest for my death, the day before I die. But lift me, dear, for I'm tired. Let me taste the wine, and lay your cheek a little while on this lined cheek of mine. I want to say I love you so. Your patient love is why I'll have such little time, the day before I die.
firelight, so watch on the curb. Comes a man, call him, gone he is vexed. Curses befall him and wait for the next. Fair world and bright world, life still is sweet. Girl of the night world, watch on the street. Watch on the curb. Watch on the curb. Hope is a firelight, so watch on the curb. Dreary the watch is, moon sinks from sight. Gas only blotches darkness with light. Never, oh never let courage go down. Keep from the river, oh girl of the town.
We're going to stay with Henry. Why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we? And really, it's quite a similar theme. Henry, I always describe as being the poet we described as ours. He was our Henry. No other poet was like that for me, and I'm sure the same would have been true. I was born almost exactly 100 years after Henry Lawson, but spent a lot of my life in Henry Lawson country or in places and parts of the world and around the same sort of people. Time passed a bit more, things progressed a little bit more slowly in those days in some senses, I think, and which meant that we spoke very similar language to what Henry wrote with. Not surprising, really, because he taught us how to talk. So we thought of Henry as ours. Henry gave one poem where he kind of talked about what he thought about that. And the song that comes out of the poem is Henry's another later work of Henry's called The Soul of a Poet. It's on this wonderful mug that Neil Randall made for me after hearing us do some Henry Lawson at Gulgong one year, going back a few years. I have a quote from this wonderful poem, one of my favourite works of Henry's.
Yeah,
straight
me
up.
too, definitely. It's very straight. It's very straight. Henry's describing who he is and what he's done, and how no one seems to get it, but he's convinced. He's convinced it's worth something, and one day it'll be worth something. And of course, he was right. Yeah. So this is the soul of a poet.
And There's an enormous amount of love in this, in these both of these pieces. We wrote the tune for The Soul of a Poet, but it's panel beaten extraordinarily from the essence of a traditional tune called The Wedding of Locke and McGraw. Unrecognisable. Oh, hi Warren. Hi Christine too. Hello. Yeah, nice to see you, meet you. Yeah, that's the Locke and McGraw. Came from a great player out at Hill End, Sofala, long since passed away now. His name was Joe Yates, the king of bush fiddlers. We made an album of Joe Yates tunes with Mike Martin and Stretch, Stephen Teakle back in the 90s. Yeah. Really wonderful fiddle tunes.
Yeah, so we adapted that. We've stretched it and hammered it and turned it into a tune for this poem. And before we do that one, before we do The Soul of a Poet, I think not many people... You think of Henry and you think of the written word and you think of Henry publishing in the Bulletin. I don't know how many people think of Henry doing gigs, actually standing up and saying his poems.
Well, we certainly know he did.
And yeah, he obviously did.
Yeah, we know he did. Especially after, beer makes you feel the way you ought to feel without beer, as he said. So, looking over the top of a glass of beer, of ale at his mates. Yeah, I'm sure he was a fine reciter. Banjo was famously not a great reciter. He didn't have a voice for it, but I think Henry had the projection,
Yeah, so in this first little short poem that Jason's going to recite for you, he's in that situation where he's in the pub being accosted by people, and he ties it into this idea that to be a poet you have to be empathetic and you have to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, which is perhaps not something the critics always do.
This is what he wrote. He said, "In the parlour of the shanty, where the lives have all gone wrong, when a singer or reciter gives a story or a song, where a poet's heart is speaking to their hearts in every line, till the hardest curse and blubber at the thoughts of auld lang syne. Then a boozer lurches forward, with an oath for all disguise, prayers and curses in his soul, and tears and liquor in his eyes. He grasps the singer or reciter with a death grip by the hand. Oh, that's the truth, bloke. Sling it at him. Oh, God, blimey, that was grand. Don't mind me. I've got him. Well, you know. What's your name, bloke? Don't you see? Who's the bloke what wrote the poetry? Will you write it down for me?" And the backblocks bard goes through it, ever seeking as he goes for the line of least resistance to the hearts of men he knows. And he tracks their hearts in mateship, and he tracks them out alone, seeking for the power to sway them until he finds it in his own. He feels what they feel. He loves what they love. He learns to hate what they condemn. He takes his pen, and tears and triumph, and he writes it down for them.
I have written long years, I have written for the sake of my people and right. I was true when the iron had bitten deep into my soul in the night. I wrote not for praise nor for money, I craved but the soul and the pen, and I felt not the sting in the honey of writing the kindness of men. You read and you saw without seeing, my work seemed a trifle apart, while the truth of things thrilled through my being, and the wrong of things murdered my heart, but cast out and despised and neglected, and weak and in fear and in debt, my songs mutilated, rejected, shall ring through the commonwealth, yeah. have mocked at my bodily vileness. You have tempted and cast me aside, but wronged and cast out, drink sodden, but shunned and insane and unclean. I have bed where few others have trodden. I have seen what few others have seen. I have seen your souls bared for a season. I have heard as a deaf man can hear. I have seen you deprived of your reason and stricken with deadliest fear. And when beautiful night hid the shocking black shame of the day that was past, I felt the great universe rocking with the truth that was coming at last.
So, yeah, the tune came from, well, it's a long way from The Wedding of Locke and McGraw, but the inspiration was a wonderful tune from Joe Yates. And one of the things we love is our dance music. And I say our dance music, the music that comes from this part of the world. And we're going to do a set now of tunes. We've said duets tonight, and the duets are largely song-poem combinations or songs where we both sing verses, that sort of idea. But we also are going to play a couple of dance tunes where we split the melodies around a little bit more than maybe normally. And the first tune is another tune from Joe Yates of Sofala, and it's called Sofala Cuckoo, one of our favourites. Real standout tune, home tune. It always just makes me feel like right here, you know. But it's also just, we go from that tune into another couple of tunes that is another thing that we love dearly over our 30 years. It's playing in the band Collector. And so us with some mates from this part of the world, Roger Hargraves, Jim McGuinney, Bill Brown, Jason Neville, Alex Hargraves, Mike Martin, formed a very big band playing traditional Australian music. Not necessarily like the bush bands, but just taking the raw dance tunes, the songs, the ballads, especially the big ballads, and sitting around at Bill's place in the old converted church here at Perthville and building up arrangements. And the second, in fact all three of these really, but the second and third tune especially in this set come from that experience, and they're all Tablelands tunes, they're all home tunes.
It was a lot of fun. There's nothing better than playing the right music in the right place. And with Collector, it was wonderful. You had all the power of kind of a rock and roll band. And at the same time, you were playing the Australian traditional material. And it was fantastic to go to places like Trunky's show and play on the back of a truck with
the Bush Tucker Day.
The Bush Tucker Day was
beating
right.
Beating the Trundle rugby league team with our bush band in the tug of war in the mud at the Bush Tucker Day at Trundle is one of the very high points of my performing life. Right up there was playing busking with fiddle on the Great Wall of China. I think those two I rank very highly. We've loved our experience playing music together. As I said at the start of the show, we are celebrating 30 years of being together as a couple, but we had just a handful of months playing music together first. And 5 months, something like that.
Just to be sure.
Just to be sure. And so the music didn't come next. We're not working with our marriage partners, we're married to our working partners, if you want to put it like that. Does that make sense? Yes. The music came first. And we've been lucky enough to play a tune pretty much every day for 30 years, if you think about it, which is kind of a privilege. So, a few tunes from home here.
No, it's just fun.
Fans of Scottish music will recognise those as Flowers of Edinburgh and East Nuka Fife. But in Australia, of course, they've been panel beaten again, extraordinary to a fairly large extent. And out here we call them Herb's Flowers and Patterson's East Nuka. They're all Tablelands tunes. Now for a very, very Tablelands story. Speaking of love, there's an immense love between the two main protagonists in this story of Banjo Pattersons. We're talking now about Johnny Dunn and Gilbert, the Flash Cove, Johnny Gilbert. So by the time this story is taking place just down the road in Bynalong, there's Banjo Patterson that is hearing about the story just after the events and basing his poem on the folklore, not the dodgy historical fact, as we say. And Ben Hall's already dead. And Johnny Dunn has the last months and year and a bit of his life to live, 2 years. It's not a happy time for Johnny Dunn. Gilbert does not have long to last. In fact, this is Banjo's How Gilbert Died. And that pretty much gives the game away to some extent. But it is an extraordinary poem, to my way of thinking. It gets my goosebumps going on the goosebumps, raises the hair on the back of my neck. It's a great yarn. Gilbert was the Flash Cove. He seemed to be the only one of the gang who was really in it for the love, not the politics, not the sedition, not the revolution, but the sport.
He left and came back. Yeah.
He got as far as New Zealand, Tasmania,
got away free,
all the stories. Kept coming back to help his mate, as he said. There's a lovely ghost story that floats around about Johnny Gilbert appearing to return a racehorse. They would just borrow the racehorse and ride it as far as that racehorse would go. They knew where the next one was, of course, and land the racehorse and pick up the next one. They always had the quickest. They were driving Ferraris, and the cops were driving around on V-dubs,
So what was the ghost story? He
returned the horse, and
the ghost of Johnny Gilbert returned the horse.
And not only returned the horse, but then lifted the slip rail.
Of course.
The slip rail is very symbolic in the story.
Because they were good lads,
Well, it's the symbol of the slip rails being not taken down when Ben Hall's cattle were yarded. There's the slip rail again and again and again is a symbol in these legends and stories. It's a little quiet out there in terms of comments. It's nice to have you, Warren and Christine, but I think there is a bit of competition. There's something else going on tonight. I understand that we're up against a very important game of football, and we will get to the footy scores later. Please don't give the game away on footy scores. There's a blackout going on here on the football scores. I don't want to know the football scores. But they are important, and I'll get to them later.
All right.
Johnny Gilbert's How Gilbert Died. We wrote the tune for this one.
Tune for the song, but it's actually the Loch and McGraw creeps in again under the spoken bit. See if you can recognise that tune.
Getting the idea that we like that tune a lot. And How Gilbert Died is a great yarn. Here it is. And the love, as I just nudged the guitar into tune for this one, the love, the mateship between Gilbert and Dunn is written into the soul of this story by Banjo with real understanding. Anyone who thought Banjo didn't understand Australian people or thought he was somehow distant, here's some evidence to the contrary.
Must have been so tempting. There's never a stone at the sleeper's head, there's never a fence beside, and the wandering stock on the grave may tread unnoticed and undenied. But the smallest child on the watershed can tell you how Gilbert died. For he rode at dusk with his comrade Dunn to the hut at the stockman's ford. In the waning light of a sinking sun they peered with a fierce accord. They were outlaws both, and on each man's head was £1,000 reward. they'd taken toll of the country round, and the troopers came behind with a black that tracked like a human hound through the scrub and the ranges blind. He could run the trail where a white man's eye no sign of a track could find. And he'd hunted them out of the One Tree Hill and over the Old Man Plain, but they wheeled their tracks with a wild beast skill, and they made for the range again. Then away to the hut where Don's grandsire dwelt, they rode with a loosened rein. And Don's grandsire gave them a greeting bold, come in and rest in peace. No safer place does the country hold, and with night the pursuit must cease. And we'll drink success to the roving boys, and a hell with the black police. But they went to death when they entered there in the hut of the stockman's board, for the grandsire's words were as false as fair, they were doomed to the hangman's cord. He'd sold them both to the black police for the sake of the big reward.
In the depth of night there are forms that glide as stealthily as serpents creep, and around the hut where the outlaws hide they plant in the shadows deep, and they wait till the first faint flush of dawn shall waken their prey from sleep. But Gilbert wakes while the night is dark, a restless sleeper eye. He's heard the sound of sheepdogs bark and his horse's warning neigh, and he says to his mate, "There are hawks abroad, it's time that we were away." Their rifles stood at the stretcher head, their bridles lay to hand. Well, they wakened the old man out of his bed when they heard the sharp command, "In the name of the Queen, lay down your arms. Now, Dun and Gilbert, stand." Well, Gilbert reached for his rifle true, that close at his hand he kept. He pointed it straight at the voice and drew, but never a flash outleapt, for the water ran from the rifle breech. He was drenched while the outlaw slept. Well, he dropped the piece with a bitter oath, and he turned to his comrade Dun. "We're sold," he said, "we're dead men both, but there may be a chance for one. I'll stop, I'll fight with the pistol here. You take to your heels, run." Dun crept out on his hands and knees in the dim, half-dawning light. He made his way to a patch of trees, and he vanished among the night. And the trackers hunted his tracks all day, but they never could trace his flight. But Gilbert walks from the open door in a confident style and rash. He heard at his side the rifles roar, and he heard the bullets crash, and he laughed as he lifted his pistol hand, and he fired at the rifle flash. And then out of the shadows the troopers aimed at his voice, and the pistol sound. With the rifle flashes, the darkness flamed. He staggered and spun around, and they riddled his body with rifle balls as it lay on the blood-soaked ground.
There's never a stone at the sleeper's head, there's never a fence beside, and the wandering stock on the grave may tread unnoticed and undenied. But the smallest child on the watershed can tell you how Gilbert died.
Well, that was once true too. That was once true. Any little kid would tell you those stories. And still true to a certain extent. Just had the pleasure of Earlwood Public School as my kind of job doing campfire work, which I've been doing for a long, long time. We used to do it together. It goes back a long way to 1997. Near 200,000 kids, maybe more over those years. It's the best job in the world. Best gig in the world. You can hear the old campfire throats going from having huge groups. No PA, just all around the campfire. Storytelling and the best little part of Wailu, Mount Panorama, you can imagine. And Earlwood were great. Schools these days, the kind of awareness and knowledge has drifted away a little bit. Doesn't matter. I mean, it's all part of progress, moving on. Australia's population has grown so much that it's interesting to know that it's the schools with the really rich and varied multicultural backgrounds, the little kids that have really come quite recently and from a lot of different parts of the world. They're hanging on to the stories, and some, unfortunately, I've got to say, some of the little kind of, more people who look a bit like me, less so. But anyway, stories come, stories go. Here's a great yarn. This is one of the great, well, I'll call it a love story, a sibling love story. It reminds me of that ABC interview once a long, long time ago on ABC Radio.
I don't know. You're casting aspersions on Ned and Kate.
No, right. Well, I don't mean to, but it's a funny story. I don't know why I've just thought of it. Okay. The ABC news presenter, news story interviewer, was new to the job, and she said, I'm sorry, I probably should know this, but are you married or brother and sister? And Chloe said, both.
It was worth it for the moment.
One of our very first festivals ever were written up as a brother and sister duo.
Yeah.
And didn't know we'd been written up like that and wondered why we're getting strange looks, Mount Beauty. Just carrying on like a normal married couple, but not like brother and sister, in the street. And that gave the people something to talk about. Gave us a really good line
gave us a bit of fun from the stage.
From the stage, yeah. Married. We've been married. Well, we got married a couple of years after we living together, so we've been married 28 years, I suppose. But together 30 years, and that's what we're celebrating this weekend, this very night.
We're going to stay with the Bushrangers for a little bit longer. Alex
Hood learnt this version. Well, we've taken the tune and some words from Alex's version. Good on you, Alex. One of the great legends of Australian bush music, and I hope you're going okay if you're out there. We thank you for this one, and we're sorry for telling this story, but I remember it. Alex learnt this from Tim McMahon, and Tim McMahon was to give you his generation, was a First World War digger, to give you his age, and he had learnt, and he was from down Kelly Country, near Kelly Country, and he learnt this song from his dad, which puts it right back into Kelly times. And Alex turned up at, Tim McMahon was his name, Alex turned up at his door and introduced himself. My name's Alex, Mr. McMahon, and I don't know how old Alex was, but I picture him quite young. And he said, my name's Alex, Mr. McMahon, and I'm here to learn some of your songs. He said, you're Alex. Christ, you're an ugly bastard. Straight to the meat of the story. Sandy Holmes has given me football scores. Sandy! I call him footy scores, I'm joking. But it sounds like Potato Dutton is gone.
Ooh.
Wouldn't that be something? I think we have to call it a rumour, but we know and love Sandy, and we trust Sandy. And to be fair, Sandy's only saying looks like.
Looks like. All right. Where's that looks like from Anthony Green?
Yeah. I will take looks like at the moment. You know what? I'm going to celebrate looks like.
Yeah.
I'm not optimistic about this election. It seems very similar to the last one in its pattern, but I'm not making any forecasts.
No.
And so back to the story. Hey, Kate, the legend. The story is that Kate was central to this story. We know Kate's story beyond this. There's some really good research been done fairly recently too, and a lovely book written just recently. I'll throw the details in the link about Kate's story after the Kelly outbreak of violence. It's not a good story, but it's a story I wish people knew. She ended her life in the last several years of her life, not far from here in my old hometown of Forbes. Town I know and love very well, very much. Speaking of love, here's the story. Farewell my home in Greta now, my sister Kate, farewell. It breaks my heart that we must part, but here I dare not dwell. The brand of Cain is on my brow, my hands are stained with gold, and I must roam the forest wide throughout the Australian shore. Now the price is on my head, the bloodhound's on my trail. It's all for the sake of gaining gold, my freedom made a sale. But if they cross or check my path, by all I hold on earth, well, I'll give them cause to rue the day their mothers gave them birth. I'll shoot them down like kangaroos that roam the country wide, and I'll leave their bodies bleaching upon some woodland side. I pray to every prowling bird, the hawk and carrion crow. Well, it's thus I'd serve the cowardly curs who cause my overthrow.
Dearest brother, surely you would not go so rashly to encounter with such a mighty foe. Oh, don't you know that Sydney and Melbourne are combined, and for your apprehension, Ned, warrants Sergeant sign. Eastward lies great Morgan's tower, and reach into the sky. Northeast by east the mighty range of Gippsland's mountains lie. You know the country well, dear Ned, go take your comrades there, and profit by your knowledge of the wombat and the bear. Childish quarreling cause trouble in the gang, but stick with one another and guard our brother Dan. See yonder ride for troopers, one kiss before we part, and haste to join your comrades there, Joe Byrne and Stevie Hart.
That tune came from a little further south. That's George Bailey's reel that we slowed down. And as often happens when we slow down a
That
good
was
old
Roger's
strong,
genius.
yeah, strong-boned Australian tunes. When you slow them down, you sometimes just don't want to speed them up again. You know, slow them down to learn them, and they reveal
They just
things.
sound
We were
good.
talking to Danny Spooner about Australian dance tunes at Cabargo. Thinking back, we started learning dance tunes off recordings of Bert Jamison and Joe Yates, and a little bit off Mike Martin. And then we went off to the National Folk Festival, and we already knew enough to know they weren't Irish. Almost never were they Irish. They're everything but, English country tunes, European tunes, German tunes, Scandinavian tunes. Yeah, occasionally an Irish tune or a little bit of a Scottish tune, but they were always different. And then we went to the National Folk Festival, and in those days, there was a all-ear playing session of about 30 players, all in a circle. And they're all, you know what the session bar's like at Canberra. You've got the bluegrass session, the old-timey, you've got the Irish session, and then you've got the serious Irish session. You've got the anything else session. You've got some little pop session, whatever you got, all kinds of music from all around the world. And the Australian tunes sounded like nothing else. It was a great moment, speaking of love. Now, one of the people we thank for just the existence of that repertoire is John Meredith, the late John Meredith. John was a great collector of Australian tunes, and this next song, was John's favourite Australian story. And this is a man who knew every Australian story ever, and it is my favourite Australian story. You'll have noticed if you're watching this live, or indeed in retrospect, that we are paying some... we are aware of what's going on out there, and our approach to the federal election is to pick some works of sedition. They're all duets, but works of sedition, and this is one of my favourite acts of sedition ever. The song was written by a bloke called Clarie Regan. We're back in Binalong again, as we were for how Gilbert died, but just a few years down the track. And what had happened for Clarie was there and saw this, and brought the story up to Sydney and worked with Norm Dengate, John's dad, and told the story to Norm. Norm passed it on to John. John loved the story too, and completed the song from the story. So there was a part of a song, John wrote the rest of it, and set it to the great old tune, the Cammerwheel Races. Now that's really appropriate. John always picked the right tune for a song. This is
not something you do lightly.
So that's right. Exactly right. And so the story is, it's 1913. Okay. Quite an interesting year in Australia's history, considering what was coming and what had just been. Bearing in mind that the 1890s depression by any measure was far worse than the Great Depression of the 30s. So people were coming out of something, but what had happened post-gold rush and in the Victorian era was the re-Britishizing of Australia. This place was incredibly strong in its multicultural nature, and robustly so. And then much was happening in England actually at the same time. Britain was being invented, and Britain was being invented here too, much to our detriment as a country, in my opinion. And so 1913 was an interesting time all across the country, where there was, for the first time in a long time, there was this sense of strata in society, that there were people who were entitled. And how that represented itself in Binalong was the local squatters decided that after the shearers and workers had run amok at the picnic race ball the previous year, I believe they probably had. Yeah. I mean, why not? That's what it's for. A party, parties. And so they weren't invited the following year in Binalong. So they took matters into their own hands. Yeah. And this is the story.
That's what they did. Made their statement.
We will.
Yes, having been accused of lowering the tone, they felt it only fitting to do so.
And tonight I'll dedicate this song to all little bully boys trying to play dress-ups as Tories. May you rest without peace. god you're like is coming to get you. Sorry, I am angry. I'm underneath my smiling exterior. I'm angry at the inequity in this country. I'm angry about the treatment of people looking for asylum. I'm angry that suddenly it's okay in this country. Suddenly, maybe not so suddenly in this country, to have haves and have-nots, and that the haves are very happy to close the door after them. It's not really the Australia I grew up in. For all its faults, back in the 80s and 70s, it was a hell of a lot fairer than the world we live in here right now. And it'd be nice to get that balance back just a little, maybe a lot. The Binalong incident, a true story. We have the newspaper reports to prove it.
All right.
Oh, I've dropped you. The song is known by a few names. Just quickly, Clarie Regan, traditional from Binalong, John Dengate, and traditional tune, and a true story. Take a trip away down south, and when you get to Binalong, hop out and shut your mouth. For in that town you'll find there's blokes that's fit for anything. But if you treat the boys alright, they'll treat you like a king. Will is Jonesy from the timber mill, a lad that's full of grit. And Smithy from the butcher shop, well, he threw a can of shit. And Billy Winks from Casterstock came down to lend a hand. And Willie Riley laughed so loud, he said, I think it's grand. They shook the shit from Rooney's pub the night they held the ball. They hoisted it on shoulders high and marched up to the hall. Well, they all took up their posies then, by window and by door. And at the given signal, boy, well, they flung it on the floor. Oh no, the dunnies from the pub. Oh, we slippery. A lady neath the window, all dressed up in fancy clothes, was waltzing with the squatter when the smell of sailor knows. She thought that she had broken wind and blushed a little bit. But when she saw her bustle boy, well, they fainted, screaming shit. Well, anyone out there who's played a little bit of dance music, you'll know. And even if you haven't, let me tell you that one of the things you know is if you're playing dance music in a hall like that beautiful old Bluestone Hall in Binalong, or any little hall big, that one's quite big, whatever happens in the hall, you don't stop playing. That's not to say you play the same way. raised a hue and cry. They could not get a verdict, though they did invoke the law. Now the courthouse bells are ringing, and the Bynalong boys are singing for the shit flung on the floor. Well, most of the boys did actually plead guilty, and rightly so. After all, they did it. But one of the lads his father had a connection in Sydney who was a legal eagle and came down to work in Bynalong to defend the lads pro bono, or probably for the sheer joy of the case. And he did a little scratching around in the mess, and he found out that the only eyewitness who could actually position the boys outside the hall with the night sword ready to, was a lady who could not explain, when pressed, what she was doing outside the hall without her husband at that time of night. The prosecution's case collapsed, and the rest of the lads were let off, and one of them, Wags, did, evidently, according to the newspaper and the song, get up into the Bynalong courthouse and ring the bell for liberty, and rightly so. Now, a few years ago, after we discovered this song in John Dengate's repertoire, recorded for John Meredith, I've got to say, both of them trying not to laugh, I was in there. I was at Bynalong for a poetry festival. It was a big do. It's a big hall, and it was pretty well full. Lots of people from all over Australia for a Bynalong do. ABC cameras were there. Everything was going on. And one of the organisers, Robin, asked me if I could sing a song after tea, like it's a poetry festival, but after dinner in the hall, let's have a song. Oh, I'm getting exciting news here, but that's all right. And I said, have I got a song for you? Bynalong people. And I went out the back and I was rehearsing the song out in the dressing room, the green room out the back, and this local bloke who was going to sing a song as well said, "You won't get out of here alive." I don't know why. I actually nearly lost my nerve, but I thought, well, you got to, don't you? Those opportunities don't come around every day. So I did. I walked on.
You live far enough away.
And I live up the road, so I could make a quick getaway. Actually, I had gigs all the next day, so I wasn't going anywhere. But anyway, it was a loaded moment in the full hall because most of the people weren't locals. They were listening to the story, but they were wondering. You could see the feeling from the stage was that the people from out of town were wondering how the locals were going to react to this. This is raw nerve stuff in Bynalong still. It's not that long ago in Bynalong. And then some of the local volunteers, the younger folks up the back of the hall, started miming, reenacting the kind of what was going on in the song, just to kind of make it even more interesting. They were enjoying it, obviously. And I was too. And then one of the local squatters, thank Dog, decided it was funny. You could see the moment where the squatter, one of the squatters, right, positioned in the debate probably, decided it was funny and laughed.
And it was all right.
It was all fine. Yeah. It was all fine. And then the song sort of turned on me just right towards the end. It's amazing how much time you actually have on stage, the amount of things that can go through your head. I looked up the back of the hall and I saw the honour board, First World War, and I thought, this song is 1913. I thought, these are probably those lads on that board, and the whole thing kind of took on a whole nother element, that spirit of sedition carried over to troops that famously could not be controlled. Respect, saluting was a sign of respect you might earn, To Australian soldiers past an English officer in Egypt, they don't salute, and the officer cries, "Do you know who I am?" "Hey, Charlie, there's a bloke over here who doesn't know who he is." All that stuff, They're for as fine a body of men as you'd ever hope to see. Yes, but when it comes to spit and polish, they're far too much spit and...
Not nearly enough polish.
That stuff. So here's a couple of pieces from the time of the First World War, both written by First World War soldiers.
Yeah, and we've just recently come across the full words for this one. We were singing a verse of it and really enjoying that. But when you get all the verses, it's an angry and heartbreaking story.
Sandy's saying Craig Kelly's lost his seat. Couldn't have happened to a nicer bloke. Couldn't have happened to a nicer bloke. See you later, arsehole. I'm taking this as like, it should really be considered rumour, but it's Sandy. And
it's Sandy. We trust you, Sandy.
So yes, sorry, Chloe's just introducing quite an amazing song.
Yeah.
From the First World War.
Two different perspectives, really, on how to look at the impact of a war.
Famously, many of the diggers struggled when they came home with things like we would now call PTSD and so forth. And
they were promised marvellous things, They were coming home to the land of freedom, and it just didn't happen.
But again and again in these first-hand accounts that we have here, you see quotes like, the comradeship of war was lost in peace. The love, and there's no other word for it, between the soldiers at risk of losing their lives, and also that very big risk that is not often representative of killing people, which is never easy for a human unless you've been really conditioned to do so, which is much more the military training now, not then. Created this situation where people behaved extraordinarily well to each other, and famously across the trenches at Gallipoli between the Turkish soldiers and the Australian soldiers. And I think, from my awareness, less so on the Western Front, where things got...
A bayonet, that's a working... What is it? That's a weapon with a working man at either end.
That's that sort of feeling, yeah. What they called shell shock, Chris, that's right. Nice to see you. I put C in quotes. I hope you're okay out there. Yeah, I know what you mean. This country needs a hose put through it like a cow bale. And, at that level of the elected representatives, I just hope it's happening out there. Sorry, I'm very...
Okay, go on.
So, two love songs from the time of the First World War. One between diggers and For a Life That's Not Coming Back. And then one between a young Australian man and a young French woman. When this bleeding war is over, oh, how happy I shall be when I get my civic clothes on. No more soldiering for me. Now the bleeding war is over. Oh, how happy was I then. Now Fritz and I have parted. Life's one everlasting care. No more estaminets to sing in. No mademoiselles to make me gay. City life's a bleeding failure. I was happy yesterday. My civic clothes on. Oh, how happy I shall be. And when I get my devil's tail on, no more city life for me. Only one more operation. Only one more pension day. Ere I hop across the sandbars where all soldiers fade away. When in hell I join my cobbers, oh, how happy I shall be. Heaping coals upon the blight have kissed it out for me, feeding brimstone to the Kaiser. Oh, how happy I shall be when the warlords hang the diggers between their beers. And the ballad roared by the diggers gay went through that old estaminet. Pinky, pinky, parley-vous. Well, there was a digger long and lean, parley-vous, from Darling Downs or the River Rean, parley-vous, who set her heart in a rapturous whirl when he vowed she was a dinkum girl. Pinky, pinky, parley-vous. Well, they lived and laughed in that old French town, parley-vous. Her heart looked out from her eyes of brown, parley-vous. But time stood by and there came a day when he and his robbers marched away. Pinky, pinky, parley-vous.
Maybe on some field of France he fell, parley-vous. The word came back to the Mademoiselle, parley-vous. That pretty French girl with eyes of brown, she prayed for him still in that strict Now quiet is that Saturday, parley-vous. No more diggers come that way, parley-vous. Her heart grew light with the passing years, that Mademoiselle grew long and dear.
All the boys from Wagga and Gundagai, parley-vous, from Perth, the Tower and Bogabri, parley-vous, from Sydney City and Dandenong, they think of you as they battle along. Pinky, pinky, parley-vous. There are a lot of versions of Mademoiselle from Armentières, but none of them come close to that one in my mind. We wanted to play some dance tunes tonight, and these next two tunes come from Vaughan and Charlie Kyle. Now, the Nulla Creek area, if you're still out there, folks from Raymond Terrace, Warren and Christina, not too far up the road from you, I guess, relatively speaking. In 2003-04, we went with our great mate Rob Willis and Bruce Cameron up to record with Vaughan Kyle. What an experience, playing guitar with Vaughan on the fiddle. He wrote tunes and he played some old dance tunes, and there was a tape that Vaughan had of his uncle Charlie. Now, they were Nulla Creek players, really. If you're familiar with the work of Slim Dusty, you'll know that Nulla Creek was like, well, I think it was like a mini Australian delta of music. It was an incredibly rich place for music from the local white people, local Aboriginal people, all kinds of people playing music. Anyway, there are a couple of Schottisches lying on that little tape. It was an old party tape recorded in a kitchen with Charlie playing his fiddle. And I remember we were heading off to a big European tour just after that trip up to Nulla Creek, and we took a little recording of those tunes with us. And we, when you're touring, it's hurry, 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 wait. So there were wait moments, sitting on little islands in the Flensburg Fjord basically a Danish island run by Germans, Oxer Island. Another time in Holland at Yaf's place. You'd get these moments where you could play the recording and learn tunes. So they really make me feel like this is a very strange thing to say, but nostalgic for a time when we were homesick, if you know what I mean. No, well, you can see where I'm going here. Yeah. We were a long way from home when we learnt these tunes, and they felt like home. There's nothing more Australian in modern Australian music than the Schottische. What did John Hospitaller say? They smell like gum trees after the rain. They sure do. They sure do. Schottisches were a European fad, a German imitation of Scottish music that was popular for about 2 months in Europe, and we still play them here 200 years later.
They arrived here and stayed.
They're not fast, which mean in those big halls and the big clay pans, not the little ones where you do little fast steps, but the big ones where you could stride out. The Schottisches were really well suited to the dances here. Barn dance is a Schottish.
Yeah.
In the modern, the one we all did as kids. And then not only
click go the shears,
ring the bell watchman, But there's a couple of really lovely Schottisches, but these ones are both quite unusual as well. We always like the ones that are a little bit, they sound like they're made up here, basically. Someone took the Schottish idea and wrote their own melody at some point. Maybe Charlie himself, who knows.
That's being so ordinary.
That's okay. No hurry. Yeah, Chris, there's so many verses. I mean, that particular version of Mademoiselle, while Chloe's tuning, was written by an Australian soldier, but of course there's the French and the English originals, and there's some very silly and some quite rude parodies of that one.
Needless to say.
Very few of the versions are as honestly moving as that one. And a couple of Schottisches to lift the mood. And if you're out there celebrating some kind of football game that's going on, very important footy matches out there tonight, the scores are, if they're pleasing you, then Schottisches.
If they're pleasing you, yes.
Great. That's so nice. We haven't played them for a long time.
No, they're beauties, those two.
Really lovely little Schottisches. Oh, we could play Schottisches for a long time. Don't get us started.
Don't go back.
When we picked what we wanted to do for our 30th anniversary, if you're just tuning in, we've been it's 30 years, forever and no time at all, as I always say. Just you know what it's like. Blink of an eye until you start thinking what you've done in those time, and all of a sudden it's just forever. It really is. No, in the best kind of way.
Kind of forever.
I will take this forever, and I hope we get another forever. But we wanted to do duets. It's something we never thought of doing. It's crazy, isn't it?
Funny. I guess we just do them all the time.
So the definition of duets is where we both contribute vocally in an equal sort of fashion, or it's a split thing where there's words from me and Chloe, or we sing all together at the same time, or the tunes where we both flat pick the tune a little bit, so there's that duet feel. So this is why this one got in. It's a song, a poem and a song that we haven't played live before, but we've arranged over the last few years, and we recorded it with Luke Plum for an album which I don't know.
It's not made it out yet.
I don't know if it ever will. I hope it does.
It does.
We just can't quite get to it. It's one of those things. The market is very, very tough for trying to make a CD when we're quite busy with music. Not complaining, but have to make choices, and I'd love to get back. Anyway, this piece comes from there. It's a piece written by Bancroft Boake. He's a wonderful poet, contemporary almost exactly of Henry Lawson, but didn't live as long as Henry. He was a bushman and a very fine poet who struggled in the 1890s depression like everyone did. It was a very tough time, and then fell in love, desperately in love, and had his heart broken badly at a time when life was very tough. Probably like a lot of poets, he also coupled that with a sense of I don't know, I guess you'd say a sensitive soul, or maybe, however you want to think about it. But he took his own life. He committed suicide. He hung himself by his stockwhip. He was born in Balmain, and he lost his life. Well, it's where Long Bay is there now in Sydney, is where he died. I think he was 26. Thank you. Anyway, this remarkable poem that he wrote, I'm very pleased to be saying tonight and singing, because it's a very, very well directed piece of social commentary.
Yes, just right for the times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We've combined it with another little verse that we found, which I think is just anonymous.
Yeah.
Which I sing, so that the bit that gets sung, that's actually separate to the poem.
Was.
It was. Yes, not anymore. No.
So.
And this is just one of our favourite pieces of writing.
Yep, and the last two verses, when you hear the word money grub, insert your favourite Tory.
Yeah, your favourite money grub.
Your favourite money grub, indeed. Yeah, that'll do. 3, 4. Out on the waste of the Never Never, that's where the dead men lie. That's where the heat waves dance forever. That's where the dead men lie. That's where the earths of suns are keeping endless trysts. Not the west wind sweeping feverish pinions can wake their sleeping. Out where the dead men lie. Where brown summer and death have mated, that's where the dead men lie. Loving with fiery lust unsated, that's where the dead men lie. Out where the grinning skulls bleach whitely, under the salt bush sparkling brightly. Out where the wild dogs chorus nightly, that's where the dead men lie. Deep in the yellow flowing river, that's where the dead men lie. Under the banks where the shadows quiver, that's where the dead men lie. Where the platypus twists and doubles, leaving a train of tiny bubbles, rid at last of their earthly troubles, that's where the dead men lie. East and backwards, pale faces turning, that's how the dead men lie. stretch with a voiceless yearning. That's how the dead men lie. Oft in the fragrant hush of noon, hearing again their mother's croon, wrapped for aye in a dreadful swooning. That's how the dead men lie. Only the hand of night can free them. That's when the dead men fly. Only the frightened cattle see them, see the dead men go by. Cloven hooves beating out one measure, bidding the stockman no leisure. Well, that's when the dead men take their pleasure. That's when the dead men
fly. The crows kept flying up, boys. The crows kept flying up. The dog is seen and whimpered, boys, though he was but a pup. The lost was found, we brought him round and took him from the place where the ants were swarming on the ground and the crows were saying great.
Ask to the never sleeping drover, he sees the dead pass by. Hearing them call to their friends, the plover, hearing the dead men cry, seeing their faces stealing, hearing their laughter pealing, watching their grey forms wheeling, round where the cattle lie. Privation. That's how the dead men die. Out on Moneygrub's farthest station, that's how the dead men die. There's hard-faced greybeards, youngsters callow, some mounds cared for, some left fallow, some deep down, yet others shallow, some having but the sky. Moneygrub, as he sips his claret, looks with complacent eye down at his watch chain, 18 carat, there in his club hard by. He recks not that every link is stamped with names of the men whose limbs are cramped with too long lying in grave mould, camped with death where the dead men lie. Boake is the poet's name, except for the crows kept flying up, which is from the greatest of all the authors, the Anon. And yeah, there's not much you can say about a work like that, except my goodness.
Wow.
Wow. Look, there's two pieces from John Dengate we really wanted to sing tonight. There's as I said, there's some very important football games going on out there, one in particular, and football games, metaphorically speaking. And win, lose or draw, these next two pieces have something to just lean on the rudder and get the vector right. As I say, win, lose or draw, what we do tomorrow is we wake up in the morning and we form a new battle plan and on we go. And John Dengate with these two pieces does a really good job of reminding us that unless we can do it with a smile, indeed a laugh, then the bastards have won, and that won't happen. So here we have the Queensland medley, two tunes, We've got Brisbane Ladies or Augathella Station as the second tune for a song called Farewell to Joe. Remember Joe? And the first one's Long Way to Cunnamulla, was Long Way to Tipperary. John reckoned that a political and satirical artist, he was given a great gift with Sir Joe Boake Paterson, and mourned his passing.
Yes, he must have got years of mileage out of Joe.
And you got to laugh. Win, lose,
For
or
those
draw.
who know, sing along. Oh, well, you'll pick up the choruses.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's time for singing.
Worry the neighbours.
That's right. If you live next door to someone voting for the country party, sing it louder. Don't forget, just as I tune singing this on the banks of the Barwon at a campfire session. What a wonderful session that was. Harley, Joy McKeon was there, Frank Povar was there, and a bunch of other great people on the banks around the fire bucket. The kids were there having a ball, and we're singing songs. And Frank said, "Do you know that Long Way to Cunnamulla and that of John's?" I said, "Oh, I think so." And I sang it. We sang it, and I heard this guy, the fella, I knew who it was. He's the fella who was driving us on the bus. And he was a really nice bloke, and an older fella, and he was laughing. My goodness, he was laughing and singing. Then once he picked up the chorus, and as he finished, his big bushman's hand landed on my shoulder quite firmly, and still laughing, and said, "And the funny thing is, I'm a member of the National Party." Like I say, you gotta laugh.
That's right.
I'm not a member of the National Party. It's a long way to Cunnamulla, it's a long way to go. It's a long way to Cunnamulla, on the river Warrior. I know there's been a gerrymander, and I know it isn't fair, but I have to rely on Cunnamulla, they vote for me there. Oh, Mr. Paterson, he's a genius, it's true. Oh, Mr. Paterson, he makes 5 votes equal 2. He divides up the whole electorate, subtracts Aunt Edna's twins, then he multiplies a rule fraction, and that's how he wins. It's a long way to Cunnamulla, it's a long way to go. It's a long way to Cunnamulla, on the river Warrior. I know there's been a gerrymander, I know it isn't fair, but I have to rely on Cunnamulla, they vote for me there.
Here is your ticket to the Senate flow, that's guile, guile, guile. Pack up your pumpkins and your portmanteau and step around the pile. Tell the mob in Canberra I walked you down the aisle. So here is your nepotistic ticket, blow.
Sing higher, 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 sing along. It's a long way to Cunnamulla, it's a long way to go. It's a long way to Cunnamulla, on the river Warrior. I know there's been a gerrymander, and I know it isn't fair, but I have to rely on Cunnamulla, they vote for me there. Classical verse.
Sorry?
That was classical verse. Well, old Caligula the Roman, so the history textbooks say, well, he put his horse into the Senate, where he always voted nay, but a horse is still considered useful on the river Warrior. So the ancient Romans got an old grey mare, and Queensland got Flo. It's a long way to Cunnamulla, it's a long way to know it isn't fair, but I have to rely on Connemara. They vote for me there.
Why not go to sunny Queensland? Why not venture forth? Why not join the country party in that lovely land up north? Forget the electorate in Brisbane, to hell with Moreton Bay. As long as you win in Connemara, then you'll be okay.
It's a long way to Connemara, it's a long way to go. It's a long way to Connemara, on the river Warrego. I know there's been a gerrymander, and I know it isn't fair, but I have to rely on Connemara. They vote for me there. Farewell and adieu to your Premier of Queensland. Farewell and adieu and goodbye to Sir Joe. You useless old bastard, too long you've lasted. Now your mates have decided that you have to go. You ranted and roared at the Reds and the Greenies. You ranted and roared at the Black and the White. You postured and strutted just like Mussolini. Now your mates have betrayed you, and that serves you right.
You pineapple vandal, they've snuffed out your candle. Get back to your peanuts, you senile old sod. Take Flo and your pumpkins, you great pair of bumpkins. You can start playing lawn bowls and stop playing God.
You ranted and roared at the Reds and the Greenies. You ranted and roared at the Black and the White. You postured and strutted just like Mussolini. Now your mates have betrayed you, and that serves you right. Lutheran pastor, come poor disaster. You darling downstairs spot, you king or a clown. Get back to your tractor, you seventh-rate actor. You pious, hypocritical, adjective noun. You ranted and roared at the Reds and the Greenies. You ranted and roared at the Black and the White. You postured and strutted just like Mussolini. Now your mates have betrayed you, and that serves you right.
Stick that up your jumper, you old Bible thumper. You second-hand Hitler, you goose-stepping goose. The poisonous old cane toads in gone down the drain. Like a dribble of Bundaberg sugar cane juice.
You ranted and roared at the Reds and the Greenies. You ranted and roared at the Black and the White. You postured and strutted just like Mussolini. Now your mates have betrayed you, and that serves you right. Street, Pat. Artie, McGlynn. Reeling of Mike Hunt. Mike taught us that tune a long time ago.
His little tenor guitar.
Yeah, tenor guitar, and I was probably tenor. Yeah, the wooden tenor before he got the beat. And, yeah. We got one more tonight, and our last duet. It's a piece of four remarkable verses from a poem called His Epitaph, and it was written by a bloke called Frederick Ophel, who wrote under the pen name of Prospect Good. He wrote this in 1910. So just yesterday, really, not that long ago.
It's been set to music by the wonderful Bob Rummery over in Western Australia. And Bob and his mates over there put together a lovely show called The Boulder Block, with all the lots of songs and stories from the mining times over there in WA. And there was some really quite scary things to do with that mining craze. People would just head out. They would go. Someone would say, "This is where the rush is," and they would go. And people just disappeared and died without water. And they just headed into the waste. Anyway.
And yes, it's not a happy
it was extraordinary times. But the Boulder Block, I think, was quite a thriving, exciting place once it got established.
Yeah, and as we finish our 30th anniversary show, and we think of we've tried, and I think reasonably successfully tied every piece into love. And the only thing I could think of with this one is, well, it's a good duet in the sense that we both sing it together, which was important.
That's just beautiful.
Also, I think Bob Rummery and Prospect Good are a remarkable duet. And I don't know. While it's not a happy story, there's something very affirming. I don't know about you, but the idea that days do not go forever makes every day pretty special. And so, here's to days.
Making the most of them.
I'm glad no one's told me any footy scores. I'm very pleased about that.
Means it's close.
However we wake up tomorrow, like I say, the fight goes on with a smile.
Okay.
Do I sound nervous?
Yeah. You sound very worried.
A return to something near decency would be...
Okay.
Or something would be good. But thanks for coming, celebrating the anniversary. It's been a nice longer play tonight. We wanted to get stuck in and play. If you're catching up later on YouTube, I don't know where you are or when you are, but I hope you've enjoyed the show too. Don't forget, I guess we should put a bit of an ad in. We haven't done any of that.
If you like the Henry Lawson music, why not download an album? The Soul of the Poet is there. You
can pay what you like for that.
Yep.
In fact, any of our download albums, you can pay $0 or you can put $1 million in the account. It's really up to you. These shows are free. We now have a Patreon, which some people are really kindly helping out with. It doesn't matter whether it matters how much, but you would be surprised how, encouraging it is. I was
hugely encouraging just to have someone say, yep, we reckon this should be ongoing and you should keep doing what you're doing. It's marvellous. Anyway, so the Patreon's there as an option. Or you could just enjoy the show.
Yeah, don't feel obliged.
I'm really hoping all these shows are going to end up as a resource for people to use when they're looking for poems and looking for songs.
Yeah, well, there's been a bit of that going on already, which is really great. That's what it's all about. Just as, as the saying goes, just links in the chain, we put it together, we build it and hand it on. That's the way it's meant to work. So we've been the beneficiaries of so many people who've come before us and are still working out there today. So I'll leave you with his epitaph. He lies here, see the bush, all grey through grief for him, horse scrub like ashes cast, sprinkle the valley grim, the salt bushes shroud, white skies his only pall, and in memoriam 1,000 stampedes fall. God lured to death, and yet he would have had it so. Say mass, sing requiem with the grey bush and go. Quietly he has found here in the golden west the long sought for at last an Eldorado blessed. To Bob Rummery for that one. Thank you for coming tonight, having fun with us. Good night from Wiradjuri country. Better go and check on the kids and see how they're travelling. But it's been nice to have a play on the anniversary. Happy anniversary, Chloe.
Happy anniversary. Best thing to do.
Yeah. I think we'd ever do anything different. Thanks for coming, and we'll hopefully we've got some real gigs, live gigs coming up too. Orange Jazz Festival's in a couple of weeks. That is huge. Have a look at the program for the Orange Jazz Festival. It's mind-blowing.
Venture west.
Yeah, yeah. Like I always say, winter in Orange in winter. How can you lose? Right, good night, folks. Thank you. See ya.